Hey, the PMP exam is one of the most difficult tests for professionals, and we've heard this from everyone. But not to worry, you have a coach who eats the PMBOK for lunch. Here he is to set the record straight for you, your friend Phil.
Hello, my awesome colleagues. How you doing? Your buddy Phil here. Just to remind you about today's offer that's still on the table. If you're looking at taking the exam and you need help, you're wondering how to get through the terrain, we have the Crisp Factor Tech Camp that's happening on the 1st of September, and it's going all through the 4th. It is a very unique boot camp in that within 4 days, we would have covered over 60% of the content. All you need to do is put yourself in that fast track for 4 days. I know lots of you have trouble studying, and for that reason, I've put together a vehicle that can help you get over 60% of the content down pat. This is like you studying alongside with me to get you into that fast lane. Lots of you are struggling, I know, and that's why I've put this together. So let me show you, because I get questions. What exactly is the crisp factor? What does it mean? What exactly am I going to be learning in this boot camp? So let me show you really quick. So as I said, this boot camp, I call it the crisp factor. And I call it the crisp factor. When you boil down crisp, you have communications, risk, integration, stakeholder, and procurement. So think about it. The knowledge area known as communications is a very significant part of the exam because every project manager spends roughly 90% of the time communicating. Excuse my writing there, but you kind of get the idea. When we talk about risk, risk cuts across all of the knowledge areas, all of them. When you talk about integration, of course, again, it cuts across all of the knowledge areas. So risk and integration together could form a very important aspect of your exam because they cut across so many areas of the exam. You could have integration laid over any knowledge area, you name it, risk, procurement, stakeholder, communication, scope, schedule, you name it. You could put a layer of integration on top of it. The same thing for risk. You could put a layer of risk on top of schedule, scope, cost, and everything else. And that's why these two are very, very important for anyone's PMP exam. When you talk about stakeholder, it also has that magnetic property in that it brings all the dialogues across the knowledge areas together and focuses on the stakeholders' perception to all of the areas of the project. When you think about procurement, again, it cuts across so many areas because you need to schedule your procurement, you need to scope them out, you need to cost them, and so on and so forth. There are risks associated with them, resources sometimes associated with them. It goes on and on. So when you take a look at all of these knowledge areas, they're rather peculiar in that every one of these knowledge areas touches something else, and not just in a light way, but very heavily. And on your exam, that's the case. The other big thing about these areas, when you boil them down, is risk, integration, stakeholder, and procurement. Just those alone, you add them up, you're getting almost 50% of the exam. Now someone says, how do you make these calculations? Well, these calculations are made based on the PMP exam content outline, and I've shown you the content outline before. And the content outline, when you look at it, and I'll show it to you in a second, but when you look at the content outline, what you see is the breakdown for your exam by process group. But if you break down the process groups further, take a look at the screen. If you break down the process groups further for every one of these knowledge areas, initiating has 2 knowledge areas. Divide 13 by 2. Planning has 10 knowledge areas. So divide that and divide all of that by the number of processes in the 10 knowledge areas within planning. You get what I'm saying? So there are 24 in planning processes, right? Divide 24 by 24, you get roughly 1. Executing, there are 10 processes in executing. Divide 31 by 10. The same for monitoring and controlling. They're 25. Divide 25 by 12. You get roughly 2.5. And then closing, there's just the 1. So with that said, if you think about the breakdown that I'm showing you, you have numbers similar, very close to this. Take a look. So when you think about the processes of communications, and you got 3 of them. Communications in planning will give you, let's say, 1% plus 3.1 in executing plus 2.5 in monitoring and controlling. What does that give you on average? This is on average, right? 3, 4, 5, 6.6, roughly 6.6%. What about risk? Well, you've got 5 in planning. Okay, so that's 5% plus 3.1 in executing plus 2.5 in monitoring and controlling. What does that give you? That's 5.6. That's roughly 10.6%. Okay, what about integration? We've done the maths before. Develop project charter on its own could very well be 6.5%, right? Plus the 1% in planning, plus the 6% in executing, plus the 5% in monitoring and controlling, plus the 7% in closing. What do you get when you add all this up? 12. 7 plus 5 is 12. 12 plus 6, 18, 19. So you've roughly got 25.5. 25.5. See that? You see how it all adds up? What about stakeholder? You go 6.5 in initiating, plus 1 in planning, plus 3.1 in executing, plus 2.5 in monitoring and controlling. Did I get that right? I'm going to do that one more time. Let me bring up my trusty calculator to do that. I might have gotten this 25 divided by 12, and it's 2.08. So I'm going to take that down a notch. I'm just going to make those 2. I got a little bit ambitious there, or 2.1. So let's make a little adjustment there, or 10.2. And this is 0.1 roughly, and this is 6.1, and let's take 0.5 off. This will be 25 even, so this will be more like 4.2 for monitoring and controlling within integration. I mean, so when you do the maths, I mean, you get the idea. I know I might be splitting hairs with these little numbers here, but ultimately you add them all up. Stakeholder is like even larger than risk, so that's going to be 7.5. It's 10.6. It's 12.7 roughly. You see how these numbers are all adding up? 12.7%. All of these are percent. This is how your exam is stacking up. And procurement, you do the maths again, you're going to have 1, and this has been very conservative, 3.1 and 2.1, and what do you get? 5.2, 6.2. All right. So when you add all these numbers up, let's get the calculator open. You know, it does pay to use your calculator, especially before you get into the exam, so that you're used to using it when you finally get in there. Some folks are going to have a wake-up call. They don't know how to use a calculator for the PMP exam because they're so used to doing things with Excel. Use your calculator. Okay, 6.1 plus 10.2 plus 25 plus 12.7 plus 6.2. And that gives you what? Roughly 60%. Roughly. So what is crisp? 60% of your PMP exam. And that's why I've been encouraging folks to sign up, to go on down to the website, to pmanonymous.com. And on pmanonymous.com, you can sign up for this 12-hour boot camp. I mean, how many 12-hour boot camps do you have for this price? It's ridiculous. You don't even find 12-hour boot camps that specialize in these aspects that are more than half of the exam. You get what I'm saying? So do yourself a favor, go on down to pmanonymous.com right now while we still have this offer going, and you will be extremely glad you did, because no one wants to be left behind on the exam. You want to hit it hard and you want to know what you're doing. All right, so things like change requests, WPD, WPI, WPR, risk management, the change request map, all of that stuff, you know, stakeholder mapping, we are going to be covering everything. Don't miss it, okay? Be smart. Go on down to pmanonymous.com, and we look forward to seeing you in the class. Take care and see you there.